Hello comrades, it's Comrade Reese here. I hope you like the new intro, by the way. And today, I'm just going to be talking about Nicolae Ceausescu. This video is one that I have kind of been wanting to do, as I have a very good friend in college whose name is Stefan, and Stefan is from Romania, and his parents grew up living under Nicolae Ceausescu. If somebody were to ask me what I thought of Nicolae Ceausescu, I would have to say that he was your classical opportunist. I really don't like him. The reason for this is because he opposed Stalin and he opposed the Soviet Union in favour of the West. Nicolae Ceausescu was pretty much buddying up with the Western imperialist countries, particularly the United States of America and also countries in Western Europe. However, the only reason why I would defend Nicolae Ceausescu is because of how tragic his death was. Ever since him and his wife Elena Ceausescu were killed, Romania has basically just gone to shit. But I'll explain that in more detail later on in the video. In this video, I'm going to pretty much briefly go over how Nicolae Ceausescu got involved in the Communist Party of Romania. Then I'll give an overview of his leadership of both the party and Romania as a country, and then I'll move on to his death. So, without further ado, comrades, let's get on with the video. Nicolae Ceausescu was born in a Romanian village called Scorniceschi. I hope I pronounced that right. And his father was extremely religious and very abusive towards him, causing the young Nicolae to have quite a short time in school, as he left his village school at just 11 years old to run away to Romania's capital city, Bucharest. When he was in Bucharest, he initially lived with his sister and started off getting an apprenticeship as a shoemaker. This is about the time when he began getting politicized, as he was working with Alexandru Sondulescu, who was in fact an active member of the Romanian Communist Party, which at the time was illegal, because Romania was under the jackboot of fascism. Nicolae Ceausescu later joined the Romanian Communist Party in 1932 and became an active member, with his first arrest being in 1933 when he was just 15 years old for engaging in the struggle against the fascist regime in Romania by street fighting during a strike. And he was also arrested 3 times in 1934 for handing out petitions to railway workers. Nicolae kept on being imprisoned throughout the 1930s and was released in 1939. This was about the time when he met Elena, who he married in 1947. Nicolae was also being imprisoned throughout the early 1940s as well, as he was put into the Târgu Jiu prison camp in 1943, where he met Gheorghe Gheorghiu Dej, who was sharing a prison cell with him at the time. Gheorghe became the first leader of Socialist Romania in 1947 when the Communists got to power. He was very loyal to Stalin and the Soviet Union, but was unfortunately swayed by Khrushchev's Revisionism in the late 1950s. This was when Gheorghe began engaging in trade with the West. However, Gheorghe died in 1965 due to lung cancer, and Nicolae Ceausescu had succeeded him as the General Secretary of the Romanian Workers' Party, which he later renamed the Communist Party of Romania. Nicolae became the President of the State Council in 1967. At this point, he started attacking the Soviet Union. Now granted, after the death of Stalin in 1953 and the stepping down of Malenkov in 1955, Khrushchev came to power in the Soviet Union and completely abandoned the basic tenets of Marxism-Leninism, causing the Soviet Union to become revisionist, a lot like Yugoslavia. In Yugoslavia, Tito tried to combine socialist planning with a capitalist market economy. And as Chairman Mao pointed out, the reason why the relations between Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union were gradually improving was not because Tito was correcting his mistakes, but because the Soviet Union was becoming crazy, like Yugoslavia, by abandoning these basic tenets of Marxism-Leninism. What Chairman Mao meant by the term the Soviet Union was, of course, Khrushchev, and his successors, who over a period of 35 years actually managed to restore capitalism in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's response to the Cultural Revolution in China was just absolutely hilarious. They just called it a criminal act. But what Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution was, it was to combat opportunism and revisionism within the Communist Party of China. As I was saying, Nicolae Ceausescu started attacking the Soviet Union when he became the president of the State Council in 1967. He was attacking the Soviet Union for going to town on Czechoslovakia during the Prague Spring. Nicolae Ceausescu even openly attacked this in his speech in 1968. Now, the Soviet Union had become revisionist in the 1960s, as the Soviet government at the time completely abandoned Marxism-Leninism and was on the road to restore capitalism in the USSR. Nevertheless, even though the Soviet Union did become revisionist, it still did have an anti-imperialist stance. The Soviet Union helped Fidel Castro in the fight against US imperialism in Cuba. The Soviet Union and Cuba also provided support to many countries in Africa, and the Soviet Union also helped the Viet Cong in their fight against US imperialism after they overthrew the French colonialists. However, in Vietnam, the real reason why the Soviet Union stepped in was because Chairman Mao and the People's Republic of China had stepped in to give support to the Viet Cong, which basically forced the Khrushchevites to step in and help. However, Nicolae Ceausescu was against the Soviet Union, but all in favour of the West. It even got to the point when Nicolae Ceausescu was also praised by the Western imperialists. He was received and praised by Nixon, and he was also received and praised by the British royal family. If you know me personally, you would know that I hate the royal family with a passion. Hence the reason why I do kind of like Oliver Cromwell, as he led the English bourgeoisie during the English Civil War against the British monarchy, which at the time was ruled by Charles I. Cromwell then executed Charles I, melted the crown jewels, and he did manage to put an end to the feudal aristocracy in Britain, which is why I do look up to him to an extent. A lot like when many Marxists took inspiration from the French bourgeois revolution in 1789. But Cromwell's revolution didn't finish to quite the same end as the French Revolution did, because there was actually a restoration period in Britain, which was when the royal family came back. What makes me sick is the fact that the British Foreign Office is desperately trying to rebrand the image of the royal family from colonial slave masters of the British Empire into charitable individuals who somehow care about your mental health problems, who bring tourists into the country. The royal family are not your typical councillors. They simply play an active role in strengthening British imperialism. Nicolae Ceausescu was your classical opportunist. He was buddying up with the Western imperialist countries to try and challenge the Soviet Union. He allowed IMF banks into Romania, and he had obviously abandoned the basic tenets of Marxism-Leninism by this sympathy to the West. If that doesn't scream out revisionist, I don't know what does. As you can tell, I don't like Nicolae Ceausescu. I would say that he was one of those fake communists who would say to you, oh yeah, you can be a socialist, you can be a communist, but don't be pro-Soviet. Don't look at the example that the Soviet Union set for working people all across the world. Just get into bed with the Western bourgeoisie and claim that you're a communist. Whoop-de-doo. Nicolae Ceausescu's plan to buddy up with the West soon backfired on him, as his anti-Soviet stance made the West start funding him, and he didn't actually realise that this funding was actually doing more harm than good. Nicolae Ceausescu borrowed around $13 billion from the West to try and finance economic development programs, but these loans actually devastated Romania's finances. During Nicolae Ceausescu's rule, the 1980s was pretty much the worst time for Romania, as his opportunism pretty much became all too clear. Nicolae Ceausescu had buddied up with the West and borrowed countless amounts of money from the West, only to plunge Romania into further debt. This led Nicolae Ceausescu ordering for the export of a massive chunk of Romania's agricultural and industrial products to try and repay the country's debts. However, this plan also backfired, as it resulted in domestic shortages in things like food, electricity, gas and heating. It even got to the point when every single regional radio station was closed down and televisions only broadcasted for 2 hours a day on one channel. This ultimately resulted in the decrease of living standards for the Romanian population. But shortly before Nicolae Ceausescu was killed in 1989, the country's debt had been fully repaid. However, Nicolae carried on with these exports. Finally, in 1989, Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were killed. Romania's relationship with the Soviet Union was bad enough, but as well as that, Romania's relationship with the Western imperialist countries had also gone kaplunk. Nicolae Ceausescu's death is basically the only reason why I would defend him, due to how tragic it was. The West always hypes up this notion that it was the Romanian Revolution which was what killed Nicolae Ceausescu, but it was actually a coup. This coup was carried out by the CIA and MI6, who began exploiting small pockets of government opposition and painted these small groups of protesters as revolutionaries who were engaged in a populist uprising. The CIA and MI6 then funded the Romanian military to engage in this coup, and they pretended that it was a revolution. During this coup, the Romanian military and the small group of protesters who were backed by the CIA and MI6 were fighting against Nicolae Ceausescu, his party and his secret police. There were even fights on the streets of Bucharest between the Romanian military and Nicolae Ceausescu's secret police. During Nicolae Ceausescu's final speech in 1989, the protesters managed to break into the Central Committee building, causing him to flee Bucharest with his wife on a helicopter to his residence in Snagov.
Dragi tovarăși și prieteni, cetățeni ai capitalei României socialiste, doresc în primul rând să vă adresez dumneavoastră, participanților la această mare adunare populară, tuturor locuitorilor municipiului București, un salut călduros revoluționar, împreună cu cele mai bune urări de succes în toate domeniile de activitate. Doresc de asemenea să adresez mulțumiri inițiatorilor și organizatorilor acestei mari manifestări populare din București, considerând aceasta ca o Allo! 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 Da, elicopterul.
But they then fled again to go to Targovosti. Please excuse my pronunciation, I don't really know how to pronounce it, so please let me know in the comments if there are any Romanian comrades watching. When they were on their way to their new destination, the Romanian military ordered for the helicopter to land, where Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu were held up by the police and later handed over to the military. On Christmas Day, 1989, Nicolae and Elena were put on trial in a small room and were charged for illegal gathering of wealth and also genocide. Nicolae and Elena were then sentenced to death. It was originally planned that they would be executed by the Romanian military one by one in separate rooms, but the Ceausescus demanded that they should die together, and the Romanian military agreed to this. That was when Nicolae and Elena had their hands tied behind their backs and they were taken outside to be shot dead.
But they said no. They wanted to die together. Then I asked the officer to grant them their last wish, to be shot together.
Le-am ordonat colegilor mei să ne deplasăm în jur de 6 pași.
I ordered my men to set the machine guns on automatic fire to make sure we wouldn't miss.
La foc automat, ca nu cumva să ratăm tragerea.
I fired 29 cartridges in 3 rounds. The first one hit Nicolae in the knees, and the second in his chest. And the third round hit Elena Ceausescu.
Următoarea rafală a fost asupra Elenei Ceausescu.
Nu mai trage nimeni.
Because the two paratroopers with him panicked and were slow to open fire, Boiru believes it was his shots which killed Nicolae and Elena.
Ridică-l să-l vedem. Ridică-l să-l vedem. Ridică-l, mai sus capul.
Cunosc pe lume, aminti,